Hello everyone. This is part 2 of the SchedulePro tutorial video series that covers the example presented in chapter 4 of the SchedulePro manual. Please make sure to watch part 1 of this video tutorial series before watching this video. Furthermore, remember to visit our website www.intelligent.com where you can download a full functional evaluation version of SchedulePro. Let's now continue the tutorial where we left off. As you may remember, in part 1 we stopped after the addition of the first operation in procedure P1. Therefore, we need to add the rest of the operations for the procedures in order to complete this recipe. Also, an important thing to mention at this point is that due to the interdependent nature of operation scheduling, it is usually easier to first declare all procedures and operations in the recipe and then visit each operation's properties dialog to declare the scheduling details. Therefore, we're going to proceed to add the various operations in the different procedures. Continuing with P1, we need to add 5 more operations. To add an operation, you simply need to click on the Add New Operation button and then give your operation a name. We can change the name of the second operation in this procedure to charge sodium chloride. In a similar manner, we're going to add the charge of the API, the mixing operation, mix thoroughly, the transfer to the storage tank, and finally our cleaning operation, clean tank. Next, let's select procedure P2 and add its respective operations. Let's first select operation 1 and change its name to receive from mix tank. Also, let's add 2 more operations. The first one we'll name feed filler, and the second one will be the cleaning operation, clean tank. These are all the operations necessary for this procedure, so let's proceed to P3. In this last procedure, we need 2 operations. The first will be fill bags. And the second will be a cleaning operation, clean filler. These are all the operations necessary for this recipe, and our next step is to initialize them. Let's begin with P1. The first operation in this sequence, charge water, has already been initialized. So let's proceed to our second operation, charge sodium chloride. An alternate way to access the properties of an operation is by double-clicking on it. For this operation, we need to change the duration to 15 minutes. Notice that through this dialog there are various options to specify duration. We'll discuss them as we go along. Let's now proceed to the Scheduling tab. With regards to scheduling, it is important to mention that the first operation of a procedure is by default scheduled to start at the beginning of the batch. All other subsequent operations are scheduled to start at the end of their previous operation. Here you can see that the charge of sodium chloride has been scheduled at the end of the charge of water automatically, which in this case is the right sequence. The Scheduling tab also offers options that allow us to relate the start or end of an operation to the start or end of other operations in the same or other procedures. Now that we've initialized this operation, we can either click OK and then select the next operation to edit it from the list, or we can use these buttons to navigate through the operations. Let's click OK and next operation. For this operation, we also need to change the duration to 15 minutes. Furthermore, this operation will follow the previous operation, which is the default option as mentioned earlier. Therefore, let's proceed to the next operation. This next operation is the mixing operation, which will take 60 minutes. Since the duration of operations is by default set to an hour, we don't need to change anything through this tab. Furthermore, mixing will begin after we charge the API. Continuing on to the next operation, transfer to storage, we need to change the duration to 30 minutes. In terms of scheduling, this operation will begin after mixing, so we don't need to change anything here. Let's now proceed to the final operation, the cleaning operation. In terms of duration, we have to adjust the time to 90 minutes. As for scheduling, we'll keep the default sequence, which states that this operation will follow the transfer to storage. Furthermore, since this is a cleaning operation, we need to specify the use of a CIP skid, which we can do through the Auxiliary Equipment tab. Through this tab, you can add auxiliary equipment by selecting it from the list of available equipment and then clicking on the Add button to add it to the auxiliary equipment pool. By doing so, we are now telling the program that this operation will require a CIP skid for its execution. In this way, we can also track the CIP skid's occupancy. Let's now click OK to finalize the operation definition for P1. Notice that the durations of the various operations now correspond to the values that we specified. Also, notice that CIP skid 1 appears on the auxiliary equipment column for the cleaning operation. Let's now proceed to initialize the operations for procedure P2. We can start with the first operation, receive from mix tank. In terms of duration, we need to pair this operation's duration to that of the transfer out operation from the previous procedure, since transfer to the storage tank and receive from mix tank will take the same amount of time. To pair this duration, we'll need to use the option duration is equal to another operation or sequence of operations. Furthermore, we need to specify the procedure we'd like to pair it with, which is P1, and the operation in that procedure, which is transfer to storage. In terms of scheduling, we need to pair this operation to the start of the transfer out in P1, since both operations will be carried out simultaneously. To specify this scheduling sequence, we first need to select the option Operation starts when reference operation starts, and then we need to specify the reference operation transfer out from P1. Next, we can proceed to the second operation, feed the filler. For this operation, we need to match its duration to the duration of the filling operation. This is done using the same option as before, duration equal to another operation or sequence of operations, and then specifying the fillbacks operation in procedure P3. It's important to mention that although the duration of fillbacks has not been specified yet, the duration can be matched already and it will be updated once we specify the duration of fillbacks in procedure P3. In terms of scheduling, we can leave the default option as this operation follows the previous one. Let's now continue on to the final operation for this procedure, the cleaning operation. For this operation, we need to specify a duration of 90 minutes, and we also need to declare the use of an auxiliary CIP skid. As for scheduling, the default option is the correct one. Let's now click OK to finalize the initialization of this procedure. Notice again how the columns have been updated to reflect the parameters we just adjusted. Next, let's initialize the operations in procedure P3. Starting with the operation fillbacks, we need to specify the duration based on a filling rate. To do that, we need to select the option Rate Based Term and then click on the Setup button to specify the appropriate information. For this procedure, we're going to use a rate of 30 entities per minute. Each entity is defined as a 1-liter bag. Therefore, the first step we need to take is to change the rate basis to entities. Furthermore, we need to specify the rate in the appropriate box. And in terms of entities to process, we are dealing with a 10,000 liter batch, which can be translated to 10,000 entities. Let's now click OK to exit this dialog. Notice how the program now calculates the total nominal duration. Continuing on to scheduling, we need to pair the start of this operation with the start of the operation feed filler in P2. To do this, select the option Operation starts when reference operation starts, and then select Operation feed filler in P2. Next, let's continue on to the last operation, clean filler. Here, we need to specify a duration of 90 minutes. And in terms of scheduling, the default option is the correct one. This finalizes the definition of the 1 liter back recipe. Recipes can be visualized with a Gantt chart that is brought up by selecting the recipe and then clicking on the Gantt chart button on the right side window. The Gantt chart can be displayed at various levels of detail. In this chart, the light brown bar represents the full recipe, the dark blue bars represent the procedures, 3 in total, and the light blue bars represent the operations. Notice that transfer to storage in P1 and receive from mixing tank in P2 operate in parallel and have the same duration. The same is true for feed filler in P2 and fill bags in P3. Furthermore, through this Gantt chart, you can access the properties of the different operations by double-clicking on the operation. You can make changes directly here as well. Now that we finished defining the recipe, we're ready to add campaigns. Campaigns can be defined as a series of batches of a given recipe. In SchedulePro, each scheduled batch represents the realization of a recipe at a given time with the use of specific equipment and resources. Unless otherwise stated by the user, the only constraint that SchedulePro takes into account in generating a schedule is the availability of equipment and facilities. To add a campaign, select the production schedule branch on the project tree. Then click on the Add New Campaign button in the campaign sequence pane of the production schedule view. That brings up the campaign setup dialog. There are several tabs in this dialog. In the ID Amount tab, you can set the campaign name, the associated recipe, which can be selected from the drop-down list, and the number of batches. If a reference batch size has been specified for the recipe, the number of batches and the scale factor indirectly determine the order amount. Alternatively, you can specify directly the order amount and let SchedulePro calculate the required number of batches. For this example, let's set the number of batches to 4. Through the Time Sequencing tab, you can set the campaign start mode. In other words, you can specify whether the campaign is to start immediately on the specified release date or after the start end of another campaign and other options. For this example, we're going to schedule the campaign with the release date option. Furthermore, in the Options tab, you can specify the batch start options. By default, the batches of a campaign are scheduled based on the minimum cycle time of the recipe, which is determined by the scheduling bottleneck equipment. In addition, you have the option to specify another larger cycle time or a slack time, which is defined as the idle time between consecutive batches for the time bottleneck equipment. Let's now press OK to exit this dialog and add the campaign. Notice how the newly defined campaign appears on the campaign sequence list. Here you can see the campaign name, the recipe that the campaign is using, the number of batches, the amount, and the start time for this campaign. With the campaign definition complete, we are now ready to generate a production schedule. To do that, click on the Schedule Campaigns button on the main toolbar. Notice now that the production schedule window displays campaigns and batches already scheduled with their start and end times, along with information on possible conflicts encountered while creating the schedule. This concludes part 2 of this video tutorial series. Please make sure to watch part 3 where I'll discuss the results of this schedule along with other features.